Dust particles danced in the dim light filtering through the cracked viewport. Kaida watched them drift and swirl, envying their freedom to float wherever air currents took them. Her claws traced the same scratches on the armrest she had made yesterday and the day before that, and every day for 3 years. The wheelchair creaked as she shifted her weight. Pain shot through her lower back where metal met broken bone. A constant reminder of the plasma strike that had ended everything. She could still feel the heat, still smell burning scales, still hear the screams of civilians she had pushed out of the way. They lived. She had lived too, in the technical sense. Outside her window, a cargo hauler detached from the docking ring and fired its thrusters. Kaida watched it shrink into the black, joining the hundreds of ships that came and went from Refuge Station every day. None of them brought anyone who cared whether she existed. Her HAB unit smelled like stale recycled air and old shame. Medical supplies cluttered the small table beside her sleeping mat. Protein bars sat unopened in their box because eating required energy she did not want to spend. The military medals hanging on the wall had stopped meaning anything months ago. Now they just mocked her with memories of when her body obeyed her commands, when her wings could carry her above planets, when other dragons looked at her with respect instead of pity or disgust. The comm panel beeped. Kaida ignored it. It would be the automated rent notice or maybe another message from the Dragon Relief Fund offering counseling services. As if talking would fix a severed spine, as if words would make her people stop treating her like a ghost haunting their perfect society. She pulled herself from the chair to the sleeping mat, a journey of 3 meters that left her breathing hard. Her arms were strong from years of dragging dead weight around, but strength could not fix what was broken inside. She lay on her back and stared at the rust-stained ceiling, counting the water stains she had memorized long ago. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Dragon feet, she could tell by the scrape of claws on metal. They paused near her door. Kaida held her breath, a stupid flutter of hope rising in her chest. Maybe someone had finally come to visit, to check on her, to remember she existed. The footsteps continued past her door without slowing. Kaida released the breath she had been holding. Of course, she was the broken one, the failure, the dragon who could not fly. Her people valued strength and grace and power. She had none of those things anymore. The clan had given her this HAB and a small monthly credit deposit. They had fulfilled their obligation. Actually caring was apparently not included. She rolled onto her side and reached under the sleeping mat, fingers finding the combat knife she kept hidden there. The blade was clean and sharp. She had maintained it out of habit at first, then later for darker reasons. Some nights the temptation to end the endless gray sameness of her existence felt overwhelming. The only thing that stopped her was spite, the stubborn refusal to let the universe win. Her tablet chimed with the daily news feed. Kaida almost ignored it, but boredom made her check. More political arguments, another trade dispute, a feel-good story about a dragon pilot who had won some race. Kaida closed the feed before the bitterness could consume her completely. Tomorrow she would need to go to the market for supplies. The thought filled her with dread, navigating the crowded corridors, dealing with the stairs, watching other dragons literally step over her chair as if she were furniture. But her protein bars were running low and even spite required calories. She forced herself to sit up and look around the tiny HAB. When had she stopped cleaning? Trash had accumulated in the corners. Her spare clothes lay in a heap. The shower stall had not been used in days because the effort of transferring in and out exhausted her. Kaida pulled herself back into the wheelchair and rolled to the viewport. A passenger liner was departing, all bright lights and elegant curves. She imagined the families inside, heading to new worlds and new adventures. Children playing in the recreation areas, couples enjoying the observation lounges, people with futures. She pressed her palm against the cold viewport and let her forehead rest against it. The metal was cool against her scales. Outside, the stars burned with indifferent light. They had been burning for billions of years and would burn for billions more. Her suffering meant nothing to them. Her existence or absence would not change a single thing in the vast universe. A small part of her, buried deep beneath the anger and pain, remembered who she used to be. Squadron leader, defender, protector. That dragon had believed in duty and honor and sacrifice. That dragon had thrown herself in front of a plasma bolt without hesitation, because saving others mattered more than personal safety. Where had that dragon gone? When had survival become simply waiting for each day to end? Kaida pulled away from the viewport and rolled back to her sleeping mat. Tomorrow she would go to the market. She would endure the stairs and the silence and the crushing loneliness. She would come back to this hab and count the hours until sleep offered temporary escape. It was not living. But it was all she had left. She lay down and closed her eyes, hoping for dreams that did not feature plasma fire and falling, and the moment when her body stopped obeying her commands. Those dreams never came, but she hoped anyway, because hope was the last stubborn thing she could not quite kill. The market smelled like 100 different worlds colliding. Spices from the outer rim mixed with engine grease and unwashed bodies. Kaida navigated her wheelchair through the narrow aisles, trying to make herself smaller even though that was impossible. Her crimson scales caught the harsh overhead lights, marking her as different from the mostly gray and brown crowd of mammals and insectoids who frequented the lower-level shops. A vendor pulled his display of fruits back as she approached, as if her presence might contaminate his goods. Kaida pretended not to notice. She had become an expert at pretending not to notice. The protein bars she needed were on the high shelf naturally. Everything important was always just out of reach. She positioned her chair and stretched upward, claws scraping against the metal shelving. The chair rocked slightly. For a moment she teetered, balanced on two wheels, and panic flashed through her. If she fell here in front of everyone, if she lay helpless on the floor while they stepped around her. The chair settled back with a thud. Kaida's hearts pounded triple time. She abandoned the protein bars and turned to leave. Dignity and retreat the only victory available. That was when she nearly crashed into them. A human man jumped back, pulling a small child out of the wheelchair's path. Kaida stopped short, ready to snap an apology or an insult, whichever came first. But the words died in her throat. The man had gray in his dark hair and lines carved deep around his eyes. Scars traced across his knuckles and disappeared under the sleeves of his faded jacket. But his eyes were steady and kind as they met hers without flinching. No pity, no disgust, just acknowledgement that she existed. The little girl clutched a worn stuffed rabbit and stared up at Kaida with open wonder. "You are really big," the girl said in the blunt way children had. "Are you a dragon? A real one?" "Lily manners," the man said gently, but he did not pull the child away. His voice carried exhaustion like a familiar coat worn too many seasons. Kaida found herself unable to form the cutting response she had prepared. The girl's eyes held no fear, no judgment, just pure fascination. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that? When was the last time someone had looked at her at all? "Yes," Kaida heard herself say. "I am a dragon. That is so cool." Lily bounced on her toes. "Dragons are my favorite. You have beautiful scales. They look like rubies. Do you breathe fire? Can you fly?" The innocent questions hit like physical blows. Kaida's jaw tightened. The man noticed and put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Lily, sometimes questions can hurt even when we do not mean them to," he said quietly. The girl's face fell. "I am sorry. I did not mean to be rude." Something cracked in Kaida's chest. This child apologizing to her, offering kindness when her own people offered nothing. She swallowed hard. "You did not hurt me," Kaida lied. "Thank you for the compliment." Lily's smile returned, bright enough to hurt. The man met Kaida's eyes again and nodded slightly, a gesture of understanding between two people who knew what it meant to carry pain. "Did you need help reaching something?" he asked, gesturing to the abandoned shelf. Pride made Kaida want to refuse, but he had already moved past her to retrieve the protein bars, placing them in her lap without ceremony or fuss, just a simple act done and finished, requiring no gratitude or acknowledgement of her limitations. "Thank you," Kaida managed. "You are welcome. I am Owen, by the way. This is Lily." "Kaida. Pretty name," Lily declared. "Do you live on the station?" "We live here too. Dad works a lot, but sometimes we go to the observation deck and watch the ships." "Do you like ships?" The child's chatter should have been annoying. Instead, it felt like water on parched ground. Owen caught Kaida's eye and smiled apologetically, but there was warmth there too. "We should let you finish your shopping," Owen said. "It was nice to meet you, Kaida." He guided Lily around the wheelchair with a gentle hand. The girl waved enthusiastically over her shoulder. "Bye. I hope we see you again." Then they were gone, disappearing into the crowd of shoppers. Kaida sat motionless, staring at the protein bars in her lap. The simple exchange replayed in her mind. Owen's steady kindness, Lily's unfiltered joy, the complete absence of pity or revulsion. Beautiful scales. When was the last time anyone had called any part of her beautiful? Kaida finished her shopping in a daze. The stares from other dragons did not sting as much. The vendor who ignored her did not matter as much. Something had shifted, small but significant, like the first crack in ice before the thaw. Back in her hab, she transferred the supplies to storage and then paused in front of the tarnished mirror by the shower, really looked at herself for the first time in months. Her scales were dull from neglect, but underneath the dust, crimson and gold still gleamed. Her wings drooped, but the membrane was intact. Her face was gaunt, but her eyes still held fire. She looked like someone who had given up. But maybe, just maybe, she did not have to keep being that person. Kaida filled the small sink and began cleaning her scales properly for the first time in weeks. The simple act of self-care felt strange and unfamiliar. But as she worked, she found herself thinking about a little girl's smile and a kind man's eyes and the possibility that not everyone in the universe had forgotten she existed. It was not much, but it was more than she had yesterday, and tomorrow maybe she would go to the observation deck. Just to see the ships, just to exist somewhere other than this hab, just to prove she could. Beautiful scales. The words echoed in her mind as she polished away months of accumulated grime. Maybe the girl was right. Maybe there was still something worth seeing. 3 weeks passed and Kaida kept running into them. Too often to be coincidence, she suspected, though Owen never said anything directly. The observation deck at sunset. The food dispensary during the evening meal. The corridor near the community notice board. Each time Lily would light up and wave, and Owen would offer a quiet greeting and sometimes a small gesture of help. Kaida learned their story in fragments. Owen had been a combat medic in the Frontier Wars, stationed on Dust Belt 7 when his unit got overrun. He never spoke about what happened there, but the way his hand sometimes shook when alarms went off told its own story. His wife died from the plague that swept through the station 2 years back, leaving him to raise Lily alone while working 3 jobs to keep their tiny hab. He looked exhausted every time she saw him. Maintenance shifts, cargo loading, medical bay assistance, all for barely enough credits to cover food and rent. But when he looked at Lily, his whole face transformed. That little girl was his entire world. "Dad says we are a team," Lily explained one day as they sat together on the observation deck. She had brought her drawing supplies and was sketching while Kaida and Owen watched ships dock and depart. "Just him and me against everything." "Your dad is right," Kaida said. "A good team is worth more than anything." "You could be on our team too," Lily offered with the casual generosity of children. "We could be a triangle team. Those are extra strong." Owen smiled but said nothing, letting his daughter's invitation hang in the air. Kaida felt something tight in her chest loosen just a fraction. When was the last time anyone wanted her on their team? The drawings Lily made were childish but earnest. She drew her father as a giant with kind eyes. She drew her stuffed rabbit as a brave knight. And she drew Kaida with wings spread wide and fire curling from her jaws, fierce and powerful and whole. "This is how I see you," Lily said, presenting the picture proudly. "You look like a hero." Kaida stared at the drawing, at this child's vision of her as something more than broken. Her claws trembled as she took the paper. Nobody had called her a hero in 3 years. She had stopped thinking of herself that way long ago. "Can I keep this?" she asked, voice rough. "Of course. I made it for you." That drawing went on the wall of Kaida's hab that night, covering one of the old medals. Every time she looked at it, she felt a little less lost. She started looking forward to their encounters. Lily would chatter about her lessons at the station school, about kids who were mean and kids who were nice, about her dreams of seeing other planets someday. Owen mostly listened, but sometimes he would add quiet observations that showed how carefully he paid attention to everything around him. When Kaida made a bitter comment about being useless one day, Owen disagreed gently. "I saved 6 lives last week because I know how to treat plasma burns," he said. "Skills matter more than circumstances. You were a warrior. That knowledge does not disappear just because your body changed." Kaida wanted to argue but could not find the words. Owen never preached or lectured. He just stated facts and let her draw her own conclusions. She began making small changes. Cleaning her hab, monitoring station communications from her old terminal, tracking security patterns and ship movements the way she used to. When Owen mentioned in passing that their hab section had failing ventilation and Lily had developed a cough, Kaida used her military access codes to flag it as a critical safety issue. The system was repaired within hours. That was strange, Owen said the next time they met. Maintenance never moves that fast. Kaida just shrugged, but she caught the knowing look in his eyes. He understood but would not embarrass her by acknowledging her interference directly. Lily can breathe better now. He said simply, "Thank you." The weeks turned into a routine. They would meet on the observation deck or the market or the communal areas. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence watching the universe go by. Other times Lily would fill the air with questions and stories. Owen would share bits of station gossip or mention problems in the lower levels. Kaida found herself caring about these problems. Not abstractly like when she read news reports, but personally. These were her people now, the forgotten and struggling inhabitants of the lower decks. Owen and Lily had given her something she thought she lost forever. They had given her a reason to pay attention to the world again. She started tracking things more carefully. Security gaps, dangerous equipment, structural problems the station administration ignored. She could not fix everything from her terminal, but she could report issues using her old codes, could route resources, could make sure voices got heard that usually went ignored. It felt good to be useful again, not as a warrior, not as someone who flew into battle, but as someone who protected in different ways. Strategy, intelligence, knowing where to apply pressure to create change. One evening, Lily asked if Kaida was happy now. Kaida considered the question seriously. Happy was too strong a word, but less empty, less hopeless, less alone. Yes. These two humans had somehow slipped past her defenses and reminded her what connection felt like. They had given her purpose without even trying. Getting there, Kaida answered finally. Your dad is right about teams. They make everything easier. Lily beamed and took Kaida's claw in her small hand. Owen met Kaida's eyes over his daughter's head and nodded slightly. Something passed between them, a recognition that they were all survivors clinging to whatever fragments of joy they could find. Kaida looked out at the stars and realized she was no longer counting the days until her existence ended. She was counting the days until she saw them again. It was not everything, but it was enough. For now it was enough. Everything changed the day Owen showed up with a bruised face and haunted eyes. Lily clung to his hand, her usual brightness dimmed to a frightened flicker. The stuffed rabbit she carried looked more ragged than usual, clutched tight like a lifeline. Kaida spotted them from her usual place on the observation deck and felt her blood turn cold. She rolled her chair over quickly, scanning Owen for other injuries. His knuckles were split. He moved like his ribs hurt. What happened? She demanded. Owen tried to smile, but it came out wrong. Nothing to worry about. Just some trouble in our section. Dad would not pay them, Lily whispered, voice small. The mean men came and broke our things. They said they would come back. Red Chain. Kaida had been monitoring their activities on station security channels. A pirate gang that had been growing bolder over the past month, extorting residents in the lower levels where station security rarely bothered to patrol. They targeted the vulnerable, the poor, the forgotten, people like Owen and Lily. Rage ignited in Kaida's chest, burning hotter than it had in 3 years. Someone had threatened this child who saw beauty in broken things. Someone had hurt this man who showed kindness when the world offered none. Tell me everything, Kaida said. Owen glanced at Lily, then sighed. The story came out in pieces. The Red Chain had been demanding weekly payments from everyone in their HAB section. Protection money, they called it. Owen refused because he barely had enough to feed his daughter. The pirates made an example of him, trashing their quarters and making it clear that next time would be worse. They specifically mentioned Lily, promised that little girls could disappear on stations this size. Kaida felt her claws dig into her armrests. Her wings twitched uselessly on her back. Fury coursed through her, but underneath it ran cold fear. What could she do? She was paralyzed, weaponless, forgotten. Her combat skills meant nothing without the ability to move freely. She could not protect them, could not fight, could not even stand between them and danger. The helplessness felt like drowning. I am thinking about relocating, Owen said quietly. Maybe another section, maybe another station if I can save enough. It is not safe here anymore. Kaida saw the despair behind his stoic mask. Running would not solve anything. The Red Chain would just find new victims. and people like Owen did not have the resources to keep running. Eventually, they would get cornered with nowhere left to go. How long do you have? Kaida asked. They gave us 3 days to come up with the payment or... Owen trailed off, glancing at Lily again. 3 days. Kaida's tactical mind, dormant for so long, suddenly roared to life. She rolled back slightly, thinking hard. She could not fight them physically, but there were other ways to fight. She knew station systems inside and out from her years of military service. She still had access codes nobody had bothered to revoke because everyone assumed a paralyzed dragon was no longer a threat. Go back to your hab and stay there, Kaida said. Do not go anywhere alone. Keep your door locked. Can you do that for 3 days? Owen studied her face. Something shifted in his expression, recognition passing between two soldiers who understood the weight of a promise. What are you planning? Something stupid and dangerous, Kaida said honestly. But I am done watching bad things happen to good people. You do not have to do this. This is not your fight. Kaida looked at Lily, at this little girl who had given her back a reason to care, who had drawn her as a hero when everyone else saw her as trash. Then she looked at Owen, at this exhausted man who had shown her dignity when her own people showed her nothing. Yes, it is, she said firmly. You are my team, remember? Triangle teams are extra strong. Lily's eyes widened. Despite her fear, a small smile appeared. You remembered? I remember everything you tell me. Owen gripped Kaida's shoulder, the touch brief but conveying everything words could not. Trust, gratitude, recognition of the risk she was taking. 3 days, he said. We will be ready for whatever you need. They left together, father and daughter, heading back to their damaged hab. Kaida watched them go and then rolled back to her own quarters as fast as her chair would carry her. She had work to do. The next 2 days blurred into endless hours at her terminal. Kaida mapped red chain movements through security footage. She identified their leader, a vicious alien named Garn who enjoyed hurting people. She found their hideout in the abandoned cargo section. She traced their plans and learned they intended a major raid on the lower hab levels in 3 days, planning to take hostages to force compliance. Owen and Lily were specifically listed among primary targets. Kaida's claws flew across her terminal, pulling up schematics and access codes. She hacked into environmental systems, security protocols, emergency networks. Her military training came flooding back. Every lesson in strategy and tactics suddenly relevant again. She could not fight them with her body, but the station itself could become her weapon. On the 3rd night, Kaida sent Owen a single message. Stay in your hab no matter what you hear. Trust me. His reply came immediately. We trust you. Be safe. Lily added a second message, just a drawing of a dragon breathing fire with the words hero written in crayon beneath it. Kaida looked at that drawing for a long moment. Then she turned back to her terminal and began executing the plan. The red chain had picked the wrong station. They had threatened the wrong people. And they were about to learn that a paralyzed dragon was still a dragon. Time to remind them what that meant. 40 armed pirates moved through the lower levels like they owned them, confident, cruel, expecting easy prey and quick surrender. Garn led them, already counting credits from the hostages they would take and the fear they would spread. The station had other ideas. Blast doors slammed shut without warning, sectioning off corridors and trapping groups of pirates in isolated zones. Emergency alarms shrieked from random directions. Lights flickered and died, plunging sections into absolute darkness. Life support systems fluctuated, dropping oxygen levels just enough to cause panic but not enough to kill. From her terminal 3 levels away, Kaida orchestrated chaos with the precision of a military strike. Her claws danced across controls as she watched through security cameras, tracking every pirate, guiding the frightened but finally responsive station security forces toward isolated targets. She vented a cargo bay to vacuum, forcing 6 pirates to flee through the only available exit, straight into a security team she had positioned there. She triggered fire suppression systems, flooding corridors with foam that blinded and confused. She even reactivated ancient defense turrets in the old cargo section, automated guns that had not fired in a decade roaring to life and scattering the main pirate force. The station was her body now, every system her weapon, every camera her eyes, but the pirates were not stupid. Garn screamed orders through his comm, and someone on his team figured out that the chaos was controlled, directed from somewhere specific. They traced the security overrides back to their source, Back to Kaida's hab section. She saw them break away from the main group on her monitors. 6 heavily armed pirates, Garn leading them, heading straight for her location. She had maybe 3 minutes before they reached her door. Kaida kept working, fingers flying as she sealed more sections and guided security teams toward the remaining pirates. She bought every second she could. When the pirates began cutting through her door with plasma torches, she calmly deployed the last of her surprises. Ancient smoke grenades she had kept as souvenirs suddenly activated in the corridor outside. Disorientation charges she had wired to her door control panel went off as the pirates breached. The first 2 through stumbled, blind and confused. Kaida was waiting. Her wheelchair crashed into the first pirate, momentum and weight knocking him sideways into the wall. She had strapped a metal maintenance bar to her chair's frame. It connected with the second pirate's jaw in a satisfying crunch. Her claws raked across a third pirate's face as he tried to grab her. For 10 glorious seconds she was a warrior again. Her upper body strength, maintained through 3 years of pulling herself around, proved devastating in close quarters. She fought with desperate fury, with the rage of someone who had been called broken for too long. But there were too many. A kick caught her chair and flipped it sideways. Kaida crashed to the floor hard, vulnerable and exposed. She clawed at the deck plating, trying to drag herself toward the maintenance bar now lying 2 meters away. Garn stepped through the smoke, weapon raised, his face twisted in anger. "You think you can stop us, crippled dragon? You are nothing but trash." Kaida bared her teeth. "I held you off long enough." That was the point. Garn's expression shifted to confusion just as the access panel behind him exploded open. Owen burst through with 3 other station residents he had rallied while Kaida kept the pirates busy. They were not soldiers, but they were desperate and angry, and they outnumbered the remaining pirates. The fight was brutal and brief. Owen moved with the cold efficiency of a combat medic who knew exactly where to strike to disable an opponent. He dropped 2 pirates before they could react. The other residents fought with improvised weapons and raw fury. Station security finally arrived, flooding the hab with armed officers who had been guided to this exact location by Kaida's careful positioning. The remaining pirates surrendered or were beaten down. Garn lay unconscious at Kaida's feet, defeated by the dragon he had called trash. Owen helped Kaida back into her wheelchair, hands gentle despite the violence still echoing around them. His face was bleeding, but his eyes were clear. "That was incredibly stupid," he said. "I know. Also incredibly brave. Also that." Then Lily was there, having disobeyed orders to stay safe, throwing her arms around Kaida's neck and crying and laughing at the same time. The little girl was saying something about heroes and knowing Kaida would save them, but the words blurred together. Station security started asking questions. Other residents began gathering, people from the lower levels who had lived in fear of the red chain. They looked at Kaida with something she had not seen in 3 years. Respect, gratitude, recognition. The security chief, embarrassed by how badly they had failed the lower levels, took statements and tried to assert authority he had not earned. But the residents ignored him, gathering around Kaida instead. Someone started clapping, then others joined. The applause spread through the crowd. Kaida sat in her wheelchair, surrounded by grateful strangers holding a crying child, meeting the eyes of a man who had helped her remember what fighting for something meant. She had saved hundreds of lives tonight. Using her mind instead of her body, using her training instead of her wings, proving that broken pieces could still cut when wielded correctly. "Told you," Lily whispered against her scales. "Told you that you were a hero." Kaida's claws tightened around the little girl. Maybe Lily had been right all along. Maybe being a hero had nothing to do with whether your body worked the way it used to. Maybe it only required the willingness to stand between danger and those who could not protect themselves. She met Owen's eyes over his daughter's head. He nodded once, respect and understanding passing between 2 warriors who knew what it cost to keep fighting. Kaida realized something then, surrounded by people who finally saw her. She was not useless. She never had been. She just needed someone to remind her that worth came in many forms. The red chain was broken, and so was she. But broken did not mean powerless. Change came slowly to Refuge Station, but it came. The administrator, embarrassed by security failures and faced with angry lower-level residents, allocated resources to improve conditions. Patrols increased, safety equipment got repaired, The forgotten levels became slightly less forgotten. Owen received a permanent position as chief medical assistant with actual benefits and better pay. They moved to a larger hab with working ventilation and a door that sealed properly. Lily started sleeping through the night again without nightmares. But the biggest changes were less visible and more important. Residents in the lower levels began greeting Kata in corridors. They asked her advice about security concerns. Parents told their children about the dragon who saved them. Kids waved when she rolled past. Kata was no longer invisible. Word spread beyond the station. A dragon courier arrived 3 weeks after the red chain fell, carrying a message from her old clan. They acknowledged her heroism. They offered to bring her home to give her a place among them again. The offer felt hollow. They wanted to claim her success, to parade her as proof of dragon superiority, but they did not want her. They wanted the glory of association without the shame of her disability. Kaida declined politely. Refuge Station was home now. These people, the broken and forgotten and struggling, they were her clan. A human military doctor visiting the station heard about Kata's case. She specialized in spinal reconstruction, using techniques developed from studying multiple species. She examined Kaida carefully and made no promises she could not keep. "I cannot give you flight," the doctor said honestly. "Your wings will never carry you again. But I might be able to give you back your legs with mechanical assistance. The procedure is experimental and expensive and painful." "How expensive?" Kaida asked. The number made her heart sink. She could never afford it. She started to refuse, but the doctor held up a hand. "Wait before you decide. You have people who want to help." The fundraiser started small. Owen and Lily going door to door in their section, explaining what they needed. Then it grew. Residents who had been saved spreading the word. Merchants who remembered Kaida's kindness donating credits. Even some dragons, scattered individuals who had been quietly ashamed of how their kind treated the disabled, contributing anonymously. Within 2 weeks they raised the full amount. When station residents presented Kaida with the collected credits, she broke completely. These people had almost nothing, yet they gave what they could. For her. Because she mattered to them. Lily hugged her while she cried. "You saved us," the little girl said simply. "Now we save you back." That is what teams do. The surgery was brutal. Hours on the table, followed by weeks of recovery, followed by months of painful rehabilitation. There were days Kaida wanted to quit, when the pain seemed endless and the progress too slow. Owen supported her through every setback. He knew about rehabilitation, about pushing through pain, about refusing to surrender. He never let her quit. Lily visited daily with drawings and stories. She brought flowers stolen from the station hydroponics bay. She sat beside Kaida's bed and chattered about school and friends and ordinary things that made the pain feel less overwhelming. Gradually, with mechanical braces supporting her damaged spine and sheer stubborn determination, Kaida learned to walk again. Her movements were stiff and assisted. She would never be graceful. But she stood on her own feet for the first time in 3 years. The station administrator offered her the position of chief of security. Kaida accepted. She designed new protocols and trained security teams. She used her strategic mind and military experience to turn the station into one of the safest in the sector. She became proof that disability did not mean inability. That worth came in many forms. 1 year after the red chain fell, Kaida stood at the observation deck with Owen and Lily. Actually stood, braced and supported but upright. She watched ships dock and depart, seeing opportunities instead of reminders of loss. Lily held her claw on one side. Owen stood on the other, his presence steady and solid. They had fallen into a routine, this strange little family that nobody planned but everyone needed. Shared meals in the evenings, homework help, movie nights. The ordinary rhythms of people who chose to face life together. "Are you happy now?" Lily asked. Kaida looked down at this child who saw beauty in brokenness, at this man who showed her that dignity was a choice, not a condition. She thought about her new job, about the residents who greeted her with respect, about waking each day with purpose. She thought about the dragons who forgot her, and realized she did not miss them. She thought about flight and admitted she grieved it still. But grief and joy could exist together. She could mourn what she lost while celebrating what she found. "Yes," Kaida said truthfully. "I am happy." "Good," Lily declared. "Because you are stuck with us now." We are a triangle team forever. Owen smiled and rested his hand on Kaida's shoulder. In his eyes she saw understanding of the journey they had both made. From broken soldiers to found family, from surviving to living. Kaida looked at her reflection in the viewport. Her scales gleamed crimson and gold again, properly cared for and polished. Her posture was straighter. Her eyes held purpose instead of emptiness. She would never fly, but she had found something better. She had found people who saw her worth when she could not see it herself. She had found that humans, these supposedly fragile creatures, possessed a strength her people never understood. They did not abandon the broken. They lifted each other up. They found beauty in scars and value in differences. The greatest strength was not standing alone. It was accepting the hands that reached out to help you rise. It was becoming the hand that reaches for others. Kaida had been paralyzed for 3 years. But sitting alone in that hab, drowning in despair, she had been more broken than her spine. A battle-worn human and his little girl had reached out, and in reaching back, Kaida had discovered that being whole had nothing to do with working legs. She was complete. She was loved. She was home.